always thought my engagement day would be one of the happiest moments of my life. A warm celebration, surrounded by family and friends offering their blessings, and me stepping into a new chapter with the man I love. Everything had been meticulously planned: decorations, the menu, the guest list. But I never imagined that a single phone call could turn my special day into a nightmare. All because of a reason so absurd, it was almost unbelievable. I'm Rachel, 28 years old, and I'm preparing to marry Jake, my boyfriend of 4 years. We had spent months planning our engagement party, scheduled for next Saturday. I was so excited that I had trouble sleeping at night, just counting down the days. And then, my mother called. "Rachel, you need to cancel the engagement party," she said the moment I picked up without even a greeting. I frowned, thinking I had misheard her. "What did you say?" "I said you should cancel that party. We're throwing a celebration for Haley that day. She just got promoted to manager. This is a huge milestone in her career." For a few seconds, it felt like my heart stopped. Haley, my 25-year-old younger sister, had always been the golden child of the family. I was no stranger to my parents favoring her, but this was ridiculous. "Mom, you must be joking," I chuckled, waiting for her to admit it was all just a harmless prank. But her voice remained as serious as ever. "Don't be selfish, Rachel, the guest list is the same anyway. Just move your party to another day, what's the big deal?" I gripped my phone tightly, my throat suddenly dry. "No, Mom. This is my engagement party. I've been planning it for months. Haley only found out about her promotion last week. She can celebrate any other day." On the other end, my mother took a long breath, and when she spoke again, her tone was ice cold. "Rachel, you're always like this, only thinking about yourself. Haley worked so hard for this position, can't you just step aside for one day?" This time I wasn't even shocked. Just exhausted. It was the same story, over and over again. Haley always came first, and me? I was just a shadow in this family. I held the phone, listening as my mother continued to lecture me, but my mind drifted back to old memories. The times I had been overlooked, pushed aside in my own home. This wasn't new. It had been happening for as long as I could remember. I thought about my 16th birthday. It was supposed to be special, a milestone. My friends all had grand parties, beautiful cakes, and thoughtful gifts. Me? I waited the entire day, but no one in my family even remembered. No birthday wishes, no signs that they even realized what day it was. I tried convincing myself they were just busy, that maybe they had a surprise planned for later. But it wasn't until my grandmother called that evening to wish me a happy birthday that my mother even realized she had forgotten. In a rush, she sent my father to the nearest convenience store to grab a small cake from the discount section. No candles, no presents. Just a plain cake placed on the kitchen counter as my mother said, "Happy birthday, Rachel," like it was a chore to be checked off a list. But what hurt the most wasn't the indifference on my birthday. It was what happened 3 months later, when Haley turned 13. My parents had been planning for months. A 3-day party, extravagant decorations, a fancy restaurant, a massive cake with her name written in gold-dusted chocolate. Every relative, even the distant ones, was invited. I watched as Haley basked in their love and admiration, and I wondered why I didn't deserve even a fraction of that attention. When I asked my mother why my birthday had been ignored, she simply shrugged. "We were just too busy at the time. Besides, what's so important about turning 16? Everyone has a birthday every year." But when Haley's birthday arrived, she said, she deserves a big celebration because this is an important moment in her life. I used to think maybe I had done something wrong. Maybe if I worked harder, if I achieved more, my mother would look at me with pride the way she looked at Haley. But eventually I realized, it would never be enough. In my parents' eyes, Haley was always special, and I was just there. And now, when my mother asked me to cancel my engagement party just because Haley got a promotion, I finally saw the bitter truth. I had never been their priority. And maybe I never would be. The next morning, I woke up with a heavy heart, still replaying last night's call with my mother. I told myself to ignore it, to focus on preparing for my engagement party. But as I reached for my phone to check my messages, a notification from the family group chat popped up. Rachel and Jake canceled their engagement party? Heard they broke up? My stomach dropped. My heart pounded. What the hell was going on? I immediately checked my messages, only to find an overwhelming flood of texts from relatives. Aunt Linda, my cousin Sophia, even distant friends I hadn't spoken to in years were all asking the same thing. Rachel, is it true you canceled the party? Did something happen between you and Jake? I felt my stomach twist. Someone had spread a rumor that Jake and I had broken up. And as a result, our engagement party had been canceled. But who would do such a thing? The answer came sooner than I expected. I called my cousin Sophia to ask her directly. She hesitated for a few seconds, before speaking in a hushed tone. Rachel, Aunt Martha, your mom, called everyone in the family. She told them you and Jake had a big fight and decided to call off the engagement. She said because of that, everyone should attend Haley's celebration instead of wasting time on an event that no longer matters. I froze, my grip on the phone tightening until my knuckles turned white. I couldn't believe it. My mother hadn't just asked me to give up my party for Haley. She had taken it upon herself to decide for me, and then fabricated an entire story to manipulate everyone into following her wishes. I swallowed hard, trying to keep my voice steady as I asked Sophia. Did everyone believe her? Some did, but others were skeptical. I think you need to speak up, before it's too late. I immediately called Jake. As soon as he answered, I told him everything, my voice filled with anger and desperation. She can't do this, Jake said, his tone dropping into a dangerous calm. Rachel, we need to fix this, right now. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. We're not letting her win. Within an hour, Jake and I launched a full-scale effort to reclaim the truth. We sent messages to all our guests, posted public announcements on social media, and even made direct calls to those closest to us to make sure they knew the party was still happening as planned. But as I set my phone down after the last call, a sense of unease still lingered in my chest. I knew my mother. She wouldn't stop here. This was just the beginning. I realized that simply posting online and making calls wouldn't be enough. The rumor had spread too far, and if I didn't confront it directly, some people would still believe the false story my mother had created. I decided to go to Aunt Karen's house, my father's sister. She had always been somewhat kind to me, and I hoped she would at least listen and stand by me in this mess. But as I approached the door before I could even knock, I heard her voice inside, along with my cousin Lauren's. I just can't believe Rachel would be this childish, Aunt Karen said, sounding irritated. Canceling her engagement party just because she doesn't want Haley to have a good day, that's so selfish. My heart clenched. I'm not surprised, Lauren chimed in. Rachel always acts like a victim. She probably just wants attention. Poor Haley. She just wanted to celebrate and now she has to deal with this drama. I felt like I had been slapped. Did they really believe my mother's story? Without hesitation, I pushed the door open and stepped inside. Both of them jumped in shock when they saw me standing in the living room doorway. So this is what you really think of me? I asked, my voice ice cold. Aunt Karen immediately tried to recover. Rachel, sweetheart, we didn't mean. Didn't mean what? I cut her off, my gaze unwavering. You just called me selfish. You just said I canceled my engagement party out of spite for Haley. Did you even think to check the facts before believing whatever my mother told you? Lauren fell silent, clearly uncomfortable. Aunt Karen didn't respond right away. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. I never canceled my engagement party. My mother made that up. She personally called everyone and fabricated a complete lie, just to make sure no one would come to my event and would go to Haley's instead. Aunt Karen looked stunned. I continued. My mother has always favored Haley, always put her first, but this time, she went too far. And what disappoints me the most is that everyone believed her, without even asking me once. Lauren lowered her head, looking guilty. Aunt Karen blinked a few times before sighing. I didn't think it was like that. I just heard it from your mom and assumed. Rachel, I'm sorry. I clenched my fists, still feeling bitter. An apology means nothing unless you help me correct this, I said firmly. Aunt Karen, Lauren, if you truly feel sorry, then tell everyone that I never canceled my party, and stop spreading my mother's lies. They both nodded immediately. As I walked away from Aunt Karen's house, I didn't feel entirely relieved. But at least I had reclaimed a part of my truth. The only problem now was, what would my mother do next? That evening when Jake and I stepped into the event hall, I held my breath. I had spent the past week worrying that no one would show up, that my mother had succeeded in manipulating everyone. But as the doors opened, I was stunned. The room was filled with laughter and familiar faces looking at me, warm and radiant. The people who mattered had chosen to stand by me. Not just Aunt Karen and Lauren, but also Uncle Robert, Aunt Linda, my cousin Michael, and many others. Even some relatives I never expected to care had shown up. A wave of warmth spread through my chest, dissolving all the worries I had carried for so long. They had really come. They had chosen to believe me over my mother's lies. Rachel, my dear, I heard my grandmother's voice before I felt her arms wrap tightly around me. She was over 80 now, but she was the only one in my immediate family who had ever given me unconditional love. I hugged her for a long time, feeling my eyes sting with unshed tears. I'm so proud of you, sweetheart, she whispered. Jake squeezed my hand gently, a silent reminder that I wasn't alone. I took a deep breath and smiled brightly. My parents didn't come. Haley didn't either. There was no text, no call, no acknowledgement that this was an important moment in my life. But strangely, instead of feeling sad, I only felt relieved. Without them here, I didn't have to be on edge, didn't have to fight for approval. For the first time in my life, I felt truly loved, in the way I had always longed for. The party was livelier than I had ever imagined. Laughter echoed through the room, the upbeat music making it impossible for anyone to sit still. But the highlight of the night was when my grandmother decided to take over the dance floor. "These kids today don't know what real dancing is," she declared before stepping into the center and spinning gracefully. The whole room erupted into cheers. My grandmother, full of life and energy, started dancing with the confidence of someone half her age. Soon, the younger guests joined in, turning the party into an impromptu dance celebration. I couldn't remember the last time I had laughed this much. Amidst the sparkling lights and the warmth of the people around me, I realized something important. Family isn't just about blood. Family is the people who love and support you unconditionally. The next morning, as I was waking up from one of the best nights of my life, my phone rang. Seeing Mom on the screen, I sighed. I had expected this call, but I hadn't expected it so soon. I answered, and immediately, my mother's voice shrieked so loudly that I had to pull the phone away from my ear. "Rachel, you are the most ungrateful, selfish daughter I have ever seen." I closed my eyes, trying to stay calm. "Mom, I don't have time for this." "Don't have time," she screamed. "You ruined Haley's party. Do you know she cried all night? Only 3 people showed up. 3, Rachel. While you shamelessly enjoyed your party as if nothing happened." I gripped my phone tighter. "Mom, I told you from the beginning that I wasn't canceling my party. Haley could have chosen any other day, but you deliberately picked my engagement day and expected me to give it up. That's not my fault." "Don't you dare blame me," she snapped. "You turned the whole family against your sister. Do you know how humiliated she is? She swore she'll never forgive you." I felt a familiar pang in my chest. I was used to being blamed, but this time, I didn't feel guilty. I hadn't done anything wrong. "If Haley truly cared about family," I said, my voice slow but firm, "she wouldn't have let you pull this stunt in the first place." My mother let out an angry breath. You'll regret this, Rachel. And then she hung up. I stared at my phone, feeling both relieved and irritated. But that wasn't the last message I received that day. A few hours later, a text from Haley popped up. Hope you're happy, you ruined the most important day of my life, I'll make sure you pay for this. I sighed and forwarded the message to Jake. He replied immediately. Can't she not let this go? Don't worry, I've got you. But I didn't expect that Haley wouldn't stop at just threats. 2 weeks later, Jake received a call from his mother. Rachel, something strange happened, his mother said, her voice filled with concern. Today, a family acquaintance asked me if you were really being faithful to Jake. They heard that you were cheating on him. Jake immediately dismissed the rumor, but I already knew who was behind it. It's Haley, I said, my throat dry. She's trying to ruin me. But that wasn't all. A few days later, I started noticing odd looks from my coworkers. Some whispered when I walked past. I didn't understand what was happening. Until a close colleague pulled me aside. Rachel, there's a rumor going around that you falsified data in a major project. I don't believe it, but it seems like someone is deliberately trying to discredit you. I felt like the air had been knocked out of me. Haley had really gone this far? But thankfully the situation didn't last long. My boss, a fair and level-headed person, quickly launched an internal investigation and found no signs of misconduct on my part. On the contrary, they traced anonymous emails spreading the false accusations back to an IP address that ultimately led to Haley. Haley was called in by her own company for an investigation into harassment and defamation. And then, the most shocking news spread. Haley was demoted. I couldn't believe it. The person who had set everything in motion had ultimately destroyed herself. But I knew that with Haley and my mother, this wasn't over. They would never leave me alone. My grandmother was the only person in my family who had always supported me, and after everything that had happened, I wasn't surprised when she called me a week after Haley's demotion. Rachel, I know things have been terrible, but do you really want to cut ties with the family forever? Her voice was gentle, full of hope. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. I didn't want to argue with her. I knew she only wanted peace, but after so many years of hurt, I wasn't sure if there was anything left to hold on to. I know your mother and Haley have done wrong, she continued. But I also know you still love your family. Could you try? Just one more time? For me? I had spent my whole life trying to earn my parents' approval. But now, I didn't want it anymore. But I loved my grandmother, and I didn't want to disappoint her. I'll try one more time, Grandma, I said, though anxiety churned in my stomach. I stood in front of my parents' house, my hands clenched, my heart pounding. As I stepped inside, Haley was already sitting on the couch, her expression full of rage. You actually had the nerve to show up? Haley sneered. I didn't have time for arguments. I turned to my parents. I came to talk. To try and make peace. My mother crossed her arms, her eyes cold. Make peace? After everything you've done? I froze. Everything I've done? I let out a bitter laugh. I was framed. You spread lies to ruin my engagement party. Haley spread false rumors about me, and now, somehow, I'm the one who's done wrong? Haley scoffed. You always play the victim. You're selfish, always making everything about yourself. I turned to my parents, hoping, just for once, that they would be fair. But my father only sighed and my mother shook her head. Rachel? All you ever do is blame others. We've done our best to treat you fairly, but you always want everything to revolve around you. It felt like a punch to the gut. What had I expected? This was my family. And they would never change. I didn't say another word. I just turned around and walked out the door, this time without looking back. I went straight to my grandmother's house. When she opened the door, I didn't say a word. I just handed her my phone. I had recorded the entire conversation. As my mother and Haley's voices echoed from the phone, my grandmother's face gradually paled. When the recording ended, she sat in silence for a long time. Finally, she looked up, pain etched into her expression. "I was wrong, Rachel. I'm so sorry. They don't deserve you." Tears welled in my eyes. I wrapped my arms around her, feeling the only warmth left in my family. And I understood, once and for all, family isn't just about blood. It's about love and respect. I sat at my dining table, staring at the guest list spread out before me, pen in hand, but unable to write. I had no trouble listing Jake, his family, my closest friends, and the relatives who had supported me. But when my eyes landed on the blank space meant for my parents and Haley, my hand froze. Should I invite them? My mind screamed a clear answer: no. They had proven time and time again that I didn't matter to them, that I was nothing more than a shadow beside Haley. They had done everything in their power to ruin my happiness, from spreading false rumors to openly humiliating me in the house I once called home. They hadn't attended my engagement party, hadn't sent a single congratulatory message, yet they blamed me for Haley's failure. I gripped the pen tightly. Why should I invite people who had never cared about my happiness? Jake walked into the room and saw me staring at the guest list. He didn't ask any questions, just quietly pulled out a chair and sat beside me. "Are you okay?" he asked gently. I looked down at the list, then shook my head. "I don't know if I should invite them." Jake didn't rush to answer. He knew I needed to make the decision myself, but finally he placed his hand over mine, squeezing it lightly. "Rachel, this is your day. No one has the right to ruin it. They've hurt you too many times already. If you invite them out of obligation, you'll only be disappointed again." I looked at him, and in that moment, I realized something important. I didn't owe them anything. I had tried hard enough. I put the pen down, took a deep breath, and drew a firm line through their names. "They don't deserve to be there," I said, and for the first time in years, I felt at peace. My wedding was not an opportunity to fix a broken family. It was a day to celebrate my happiness, and I wasn't going to let anyone take that away from me. The wedding day arrived sooner than I expected. I stood in front of the mirror in the bridal suite, my white gown hugging my body, soft lace cascading down like morning mist. My heart pounded, but not with nerves or fear. For the first time in my life, I felt completely at peace. I had thought that not having my parents at my wedding would feel like a void, but as I looked at the warm faces waiting for me outside, my grandmother's eyes shining with pride, Jake standing at the altar with the brightest smile, my friends, and my real loved ones, I knew I had made the right choice. I was no longer bound by my past. Today, I was stepping into a new chapter of my life. As the music began, I took my grandmother's arm and walked toward Jake. All eyes were on me, but I only saw him. He took my hand, his gaze filled with love. As we exchanged vows, my heart swelled with happiness. "I promise to stand by you, to love and cherish you, not just today, but every day, for the rest of our lives." I squeezed his hand, my voice thick with emotion. "And I promise the same, Jake, to build a life filled with love and happiness with you." When the officiant declared us husband and wife, Jake leaned in and kissed me as applause and cheers erupted around us. I heard my grandmother's joyous laughter, saw my friends wiping away happy tears, and in that moment, I knew I was truly loved. The reception was filled with warmth and joy. I laughed more than I ever had, soaking in every moment without a single worry or regret. Then, as a slow melody played, Jake reached out his hand, his eyes twinkling. "Mrs. Carter, may I have this dance?" I giggled, placing my hand in his. "I'll wait." He pulled me into his arms and we twirled across the dance floor. There was nothing but the music, the steady rhythm of his heartbeat against mine, and the absolute sense of security he gave me. This wasn't just our first dance as husband and wife. This was the beginning of a new life. A life where I was free, happy, and no longer shackled by the pain of my past. Rachel's story isn't just about personal happiness. It's a profound lesson on the value of family and self-worth. She endured years of being overlooked, manipulated, and mistreated, but in the end, she realized that family isn't just about blood. It's about love and respect. Analog. Rachel's story. Too many people remain trapped in toxic family relationships out of obligation. But like Rachel, sometimes the right choice is to let go and choose happiness for yourself. What do you think about Rachel's journey? Have you ever faced a toxic family dynamic like hers? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to follow our channel for more inspiring stories about family and life. See you next time.